Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome to the show, beauties. We have a magical guest for you today. But before we dive in, I wanted to share that I have been deeply loving our journey recently with clear quartz inside the apothecary as women move into deeper intimacy with their inner oracle witch, reclaiming their intuition and witchy brilliance. If you are loving the podcast, if you're loving this episode and any of our other episodes, and you're feeling the call to deepen with your oracle witch, I just want you to know that you are still welcome to join our membership and take your own pace with the journey. It's all a soul-paced thing inside the apothecary, and there's also lots of other remedies for you to work with. So if that's calling to you, you can access it at nicolebarton.co.uk/membership. For now, though, let's dive into this episode because there's so much richness in this one. On The Secret Witch Show today, our guest is Carly Mountain. Carly is a sought-after psychotherapist specialising in sex, embodiment, rites of passage and relationships. A seasoned initiatory guide, yoga teacher, breathworker and writer, her work has evolved over 20 years of sacred mythopoetic practice and space holding. She is the author of Descent and Rising, Women's Stories and the Embodiment of the Inanna Myth. She lives in Sheffield with her husband and 2 daughters. In this episode, we explore how descent becomes a sacred initiation into the feminine and how death, shadow, and rebirth are required for the witch to fully embody who she is. Carly shares the medicine of descent and rising and what it means to embody naked power, shedding the old skins of shame and fear to reclaim our body, pleasure, and powerful truth. Together, we speak about how darkness is a calling, the witch's descent into the underworld, and how these initiations become portals to remembering who we truly are. Let's dive in. Welcome, Carly. I am so delighted to welcome you to the Secret Witch Show. Dear friend Lucy Pierce introduced me to you, or you to me, or however, a little while ago, and I have loved exploring your work and your book Descent and Rising, particularly, just so aligns with the work that I believe in and that we do in the kind of secret witch path as well. So I was like, ooh, yes, I've got to have this conversation. And it feels like such a mirror for what so many secret witches experience. Kind of those moments where life just kind of asks us to descend into the darkness. And how that can be a portal to like our power, our magic, our truth. So your work around all of that and also the kind of eros and all of that sort of thing feels like such potent medicine for our listeners. So thank you for being here and welcome.
So much.
So as we start, as I always do, the premise of my own kind of work is that women's stories are what is healing for other women. So I believe that we're all archetypal remedies for each other through the stories that we share. So I'd love to begin by inviting you to share a little bit about maybe your own descent, your own journey with that. And like, how did you come to this path of like embodiment, myth, feminine initiation? Like, was there a particular moment that marked your own descent?
Yes, there was. I feel like I spent a lot of time being creatively blocked as a younger woman. And I was really just obsessed with dance, basically, and went a dance degree in London at the Laban Centre and all the way through that degree, there was this incredible stuckness in my creativity, this stuckness in my body as well, particularly around my hips and pelvis and hamstrings. And this sort of freeze is now what I know it to be. And this disconnection also from my feminine rhythms. I was on the pill. I never even thought about my menstrual cycle being an important thing to be connected with. I think I was really striving for quite a rigid, perfectionist, quite masculine approach to moving and being in my body, actually. And then I stumbled across yoga when I finished my degree, and my body just opened out into yoga in a way that it never, ever had. And it was also like a sexual initiation as well, that led me to Tantra and very different ways about thinking about how the life force moves through the body. Very way of meeting with spirituality. I think I'd completely rejected spirituality as religion and therefore exiled all of the spirituality as well. And so it was a gentle peeling back initially of things that I just had been blissfully unaware of, really, but had felt the stuckness of them in my body. My actual descent came much, much later, and I think there were many catalysts for that. But the main thing to say about it was that it was a complete stripping of who I had thought myself to be, and an arrival at the deeper layers of myself that had really been exiled in the dark, I suppose. And that there was it was a real sort of call to come into my own authority, find my own creativity, stop looking outwards to others, to follow, and kind of going inwards to myself and kind of uncovering, unlayering all these false ideas and ideals that I'd been living by for a very long time.
I love everything that you've just said.
Yeah. Spaces at the same time. So it was just a real leap of faith, because I wanted to do something that I didn't really have a model for. And in order to do that, I needed to undress like Inanna does when she goes to the underworld.
I love that. Wow. Okay. Well, now I've got like a million threads where to go. What I love though, was we were just talking before we pressed record, weren't we, about like everybody always has their own remedy to serve. And I was like, I think yours is the steak. And then like you started with talking about how like you felt this energy was stuck. And that is a big thing with like archetypal snake remedies. They will literally feel like this life force is just trapped inside them, like coiled up, almost like coiled up and can't get out. And so, and life force is like one of their gifts, because they typically do have a lot of energy, but it just feels so stuck. So I absolutely love that. I always like laughed when you were talking about it, because I was like, oh, well, yeah, there we go. So we're serving snake medicine in this. I love it.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, where to go first? Because there's so much gold in that. Yeah, let me feel. I think just to say, like, I really resonate with so much of your journey as well. And I think many secret witches will, that sense of like having that stuck energy. I know for me, one of my initiations was burnout. So in similar way to having that kind of sense of being stuck, like it was literally a physical stuckness as well. And I think many witches particularly do experience that as part of their initiation. But what I like, I guess, is what you said around descent. And I'd love actually for you to explore a little bit more, because you mentioned Inanna. Like, is there something you can tell us briefly as like about the Inanna myth, and like speak to the kind of the themes that it has for women and secret witches in particular?
Yeah. So I want to pull on the word you've just used because for me, so I'm a psychotherapist as well. And when someone comes to me with stuckness, there's something in me that goes, ooh, because there I know is something, like you say, that's wanting to release, that's wanting to know, that's wanting to be revealed inside of us. And so the Inanna Myth makes a beautiful map for that, because she chooses to descend to the underworld to be reunited with her dark sister, Ereshkigal, who's queen of the underworld. But Ereshkigal is really unhappy about this. And so basically she says, if she's going to come to meet me, she must come naked and bowed low.
Mm.
So Inanna, being queen of Upperworld, is like, well, why are you taking my crown? Why are you taking my robes? Why are you taking my necklaces? She's basically stripped of the things, well, I see it as the identities that she has believed to be herself, but actually are shrouding and covering what she truly is underneath.
Mm.
And so the stuckness, I suppose, starts to get undressed by the descent. And then you think, oh, she's met her sister now. She's naked, face to face with her sister. It's all going to be fine. But actually, Ereshkigal stakes Inanna and hangs her on a meat hook and leaves her to rot there. And there is the stuckness. Like there, I think we come face to face with the stuck energy. We can't avoid it. We're hanging on the hook. And I think we do everything in life subconsciously to avoid the parts that are hanging on the hook inside of us, because it's so painful to meet them. And sometimes, so burnouts will happen, or relationship breakdowns, or addictions that we can't avoid anymore, etc., until we look at the one hanging on the hook and go, oh, I see you, I feel you. And the moment that we do that, something can begin to shift. So Ereshkigal enacts that hanging on the hook out of her rage, this upsurge of rage, this upsurge of energy that's been suppressed, that's never been met because she's just been shoved down and exiled in the underworld. So when Inanna comes to meet that inside of her, Inanna's hanging on the hook, but what happens to Ereshkigal is she begins to make birthing sounds. She starts to feel her body, and she's moaning about feeling her heart and her back and her legs and her belly. It's like all of the things that weren't possible to feel before suddenly begin to be felt, to be acknowledged, to come into our reality. And from that place, we've got something to work with. So though it's very painful, and though I understand why we all avoid it, and I too have avoided it, so I'm not going to make out like I go running to these places. We all see, right? Because we think they'll kill us. So there's some primal survival thing that kicks in. But what I find time and time again is that if we dare to trust the descent and meet the ones hanging on the hook, actually, they don't kill us. What they do is they bring something back to life. They and sheds its skin and starts to rise up through our bodies and our lives and bring us to life in a way that we just couldn't have imagined.
Yeah.
So it consecrates the journey, and I hope it, certainly for me anyway, it gave me like a sacred map of what I'd been navigating that was so comforting, and I felt so seen by that. It was medicine in itself.
Yeah. I love what you've just shared. That's absolutely gorgeous. And I can really like feeling that in my body as to my own descents and how messy and devastating they've been. And I think one of the things that I loved about what you said there was like that in the myth, she chooses it in some ways. And I think that's something that we all avoid doing, like especially secret witches. I know from my own journey, like I really avoided that darkness. I really didn't want to go into it because it's so terrifying. Like it's literally, we're facing death in many ways of who we are, and in order to become who we actually are, who we really are, almost like peeling back the layers. So I love what you shared there. What would you say to people who are feeling that fear? Yeah, if there's anything else that kind of jumps out at you in that question.
So one of the key parts of this myth is that before she descends, before she makes that choice, or when she's making that choice, she calls in a character called Ninshaba. And Ninshaba is like symbolic of the handmaiden of the feminine. She's the witness. And she's the witnessing part. She can be an outer witness, so a therapist or a guide or a trusted loved one who has the capacity to witness us. And she is also our internal witnessing, the part of us that can witness our own process inside. So I would really encourage anyone who's feeling that acute fear to really witness it inside themselves. And if it's too overwhelming to do it alone, I think that is the time to really look for a myth or a poem, or if you can afford it, therapy, or a circle somewhere where there's a common language around this. Because one of the things that inspired me to write this book was the fact that both in my circles, in my therapy work, and in my life, I could see so many people descending, calling it breakdown or failure, and kind of dismissing it as like a thing that they had to get over as quickly as possible, rather than seeing it as anything sacred or a process that had a deeper meaning that was leading them somewhere. And when we do that, when we pathologize descent, we continue to exile some of the wisdom that we might glean from these places. And we really have been taught to fear it because of those cultural narratives of, you know, let's ignore it, let's medicate it. And I know medication can be very helpful for some people, so I'm not just slamming that, but I'm saying sometimes we medicate before we actually go to the human being and say, how can I be with you in this? A lot more time and money and energy. We try to avoid it or mask it. And actually, this myth tells us to go towards the pain, that there is a process, that we will move through it, that it won't be forever, that it is part of a cycle. And I think that sort of cyclical wisdom is something we've really lost, but something that is at the heart of witch wisdom, right? Like the cycles, the earth wisdom, that the dark has its place in the cycle, and that without it, actually, life is quite terrifying, because if we're all light and had no night and no dark and no dark earth, we would not get fed or sleep or actually.
Yeah, no, I love that. What occurs to me, the piece that you said about like the assuming that it's breakdown or failure, because I think that's very much what our society and our culture has taught us. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit more. Like, what are the kinds of things that, how do we recognize, let me say, how do we recognize that we're in descent or being called to descent?
Ooh. I think any of those kinds of changes that are all the big challenges that we will face in our lives can be a call to descent.
Yeah.
So I really think that it's not just the sort of chosen few that get called to descent. I think every human being will be called to descent at some point. What we choose, the choice for me is then how we turn towards it or away from it. So in a sense, you know, the invitations are all those really difficult life moments. Death, sometimes births, infertility, you know, you name it, the anything challenging that you will experience in life can be a call to descend.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And that's very much been how I see it as well. And I think it's quite a radical lens for some people who will be listening, although largely they probably also are listening because they resonate with it. But for some people, I know that is quite a radical way of looking at things. And it can also be tempting to kind of almost just like reframe challenges and be like, oh, well, it's happening for my highest good, instead of like going in and looking. I don't know if that's kind of something that you notice as well. There can almost be like a spiritualizing of the descent in some ways.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've got anything you want to speak to on that. It's a bit of a side topic, but
I think it's really relevant though, because like you say, there's a sort of what often gets called spiritual bypassing, isn't it? Like, oh, you know, everything happens for a reason is one of my most disliked. Because try saying that to someone who's child has been murdered or is in Gaza right now, like, are they going to be
Mm.
hearing everything happens for a reason? I feel like silver lining those things with that sort of quite reductive throwaway comment is actually really not empathic.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the descent does consecrate those very difficult things, but it doesn't deny the pain, and it doesn't deny how much we might actually dislike or feel incredibly angry about what's happening to us, you know.
Mm.
And I
Yeah, I love that.
think that's what I love about the myth, is that it does include rage, it does include vengeance, it does include those responses that might arrive inside of us when life is holding us in the pincer grip of the descent, and we are wanting to kick and push back against it.
I love that. Yeah, there's so much in this actually, because thinking back to my own journey, and I've often described this as kind of like an ascension and then realizing that we need to descend back into the body. So I don't know whether you've got anything to speak to on that, because I know for me, I kind of went into that spiritual bypassing and had that like very intense kind of period of ascension. But then I actually gave birth, and that was one of my initiations. I have to say, like, you know, one of, because I feel like we're always in initiation. But so my initiation back into descent, I guess, and coming back down into the body happened after a period of like really not being in my body until giving birth, and then realizing, oh, hang on, I've got a body. Like the body is showing me, like I've just been hovering around, floating around in this like land of yeah, spirituality in this little bubble without realizing that I was still a human being on earth with a body that needed to be on earth, and needed, my body had, wisdom for me. And it's not like I kind of see them as like, oh, well, we don't need ascension. I feel like we need both, which I sense is the same for you, given your book is called Descent and Rising. So I'm curious, I'm going to leave that there as you got anything around that.
Thank you for naming birth as one of the ways that we descend, because yeah, I too found that there were, it really pulled the energy down through my body, birth, like anything else I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
Powerful, and it is an initiation. And again, I don't think we hold and tend birth that way in our culture. It's very undermined, very medicalized.
Yeah.
So yes, but what goes down also rises up. And I love that, because I think nature's such a beautiful, it's the most beautiful examples of this, like birth. We descend birth, and then our child grows up, and we grow up with them into parenthood. And in orgasm, I find it really fascinating that the way that for women the main erotic energy is, in Taoism anyway, is said to be around the breasts and heart. And it needs to spread down towards the vulva and down into the body and around the body, so that then that energy can then rise back up through the release of orgasm and spread. So again, it's mirrored inside of that. It's mirrored inside of how deep tree roots have to grow into the ground, isn't it? So that they grow higher and higher up towards the sun. There's so many beautiful natural examples of how the energy of down produces the energy that helps us grow up.
Yeah. I love that.
But I find it strange how so many of our Western stories, particularly in obviously like the Catholic religion, for example, is so obsessed with ascension, ascend, go down, and hell is down there.
I love that. I love that, because so often there's a real theme of The Secret Witch of this kind of religious kind of, I guess, tension. Like they might either secret witches have grown up in a very religious family, and so the witch feels very edgy, or something along those lines. And I think there's something in that there is that kind of ascension piece. But for me, the witch brought me back down to earth. And so she kind of like, I feel like she's the symbol, isn't she, of darkness? Like, if people think that the witch is terrifying, and often that will stop them from embracing their witch, if we're secret witches as well. And so, yeah, I think there's that real call. I remember when I first started working with the witch, I woke up one morning and there was like this figure standing at the end of my bed, and it looked like the Grim Reaper. And I was like, hang on, like, what's going on here? And it was really like it showing me just how closely the witch and death were related. And of course, the witch is all about creation as well. So there's like, I know, that death and rebirth piece for me in the witch as well. So I love all that you're saying there. And I think also she's a big symbol of feminine power as well. I'm wondering if you can speak a bit more to your work with like naked power, because that feels interesting and intriguing, particularly around reclaiming the feminine as well.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. It's just work that's so close to my heart. I feel like naked power is a real embodied erotic initiation that we work with the Inanna Myth in circle, in an online and in-person container. And women are invited to work with that, with the energy of descent, what is descending in them right now, what skins are being shed, what's present in them in the circle. And we do lots of movement practices and ritual and sharing and partner work inside of that. But also what I loved about it is there was trepidation in the first circle that we held. There is that kind of, if I really go there, what's going to happen? And also this sense of, are we allowed to do this? Like, are we allowed to really court these energies, become physically naked in a space, and reveal our bodies as they are, reveal our voices as they are, and reveal our experiences and energy as it's moving in that moment in presence? And the cocktail of all of those ingredients together is quite potent and quite uncommon to be able to do that in a space as women all together. It's kind of speaking the unspeakable and showing the unshowable sometimes. And so inside the container, we really hold that with tenderness in the sense, and also lots of emphasis on consenting, so that nobody's expected to undress. Nobody's expected to share anything they don't want to share. What we're constantly courting is the open and close, which I think is a massive part of descent journeys, the part that really wants to open and really wants to reveal. And then the natural, organic opposite of that, which is like the retracting energy in us, the one that needs to go into gestate and pause, and the next opening comes. And so just really supporting women that if the container is that wide open, and if the taboos are not taboo, what is in the way of you in your full expression, or what needs protecting right now and nurturing more before it reveals itself, and allowing them to each find that in their own embodied process as we go through the journey. And then the final day, my beautiful co-creatrix Jacqueline, she creates containers of basically ritual photography. So we build a huge human-sized with fruit and candles and gorgeous draped fabrics, and it's just so sumptuous. And then each woman is invited to go on the altar and be witness. And she's in control, even though she's being photographed and beheld, she's also taking back the gaze, because having stripped back so much of that conditioning to be obedient to the external expectation and really moving with the internal, what appears as she steps into the altar is it's almost like that secret witch energy revealing itself in real time as it needs to be, rather than what it's been told to be.
I love that.
Each woman's expression was totally unique, awe-inspiring, and I say awesome in the most like purest experience of the word, you know, when you're just like, oh, I needed to see that it was medicine in both directions. So women who spend so much time being scrutinized and seen and really exposed in many ways, and ways being unseen and invisible and kind of not allowed to show certain things. There's just such a medicine and liberation in the witnessing.
Yeah.
Naked power, however that wants to express itself through art.
What is naked power? That sounds absolutely so healing and transformational. I'm just wondering if you could kind of speak more to what naked power is. I think that would be really powerful to know. I mean, the way you've just described it, it sounds absolutely amazing. but yeah, what actually does it mean? Like, what's the kind of definition of it, if you could put it into words even?
So I think it's very hard to pin down because I think much about presence. I think we often think of power as something quite fixed and something that we are able to define, whereas how I experience true organic power is that it's the power to be in presence with what is there and needed. And so in one moment that could be being incredibly dynamic and assertive and very present in that way. In another moment, it might be being very soft and yielding and quiet even, or so, and anything in between and around those things. So I think in a way that is what the book that I wrote, Descent and Rising, is an exploration of. It's like, what Inanna asserts her power to descend to the underworld, and then she is taken into the laws of the underworld beyond what she can define herself. So it's both an active choice and a complete surrender at the same time.
I love that. Yeah.
Maybe naked power is also about paradox. It's about the ways that we are powerful, contacting the ways we are powerful alongside the ways that we are powerless, and feeling that embody us. Because I think when we enter that kind of presence, it takes us into somewhere that we can't actually contrive. We fine. It's an isness in a way, which for me is perhaps a definition of magic as well. The thing that we're just being it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And there's also, for me, I've really seen that a big part of feminine initiation is becoming, not comfortable is the wrong word, but like being with the mystery and being with the paradox, because it's so not what we're taught in this kind of logical linear world. So I love what you shared there. I know kind of a lot of your work is around pleasure and sensuality. Like, what role does that play in feminine initiation?
So I feel like because of our conditioning, we cannot always open to the fullness of our pleasure. So if the secret witch is in exile, for example, how can we fully open to what we are, and therefore how can we fully experience pleasure in life if we're always spending a good proportion of our life energy keeping something trapped in the underworld?
Yes. Yeah.
So what I notice about pleasure in my own body and in the bodies of the people that I work with is that actually, again, it requires real presence to track pleasure in a deep embodied way. And many of us, because of past life experiences, the traumas, fears, relational difficulties, tend to either perform over the top of it or dissociate from it or find it very hard to let go to it. Actually, pleasure can be a really vulnerable place and a really fun and amazing place. But in the depths of pleasure, I think we always touch the unknown. So I think pleasure is such a symbol of a healthy, functioning society when we can get together and enjoy music and art and being together, and sexuality is welcomed and supported, and all of those things that bring us pleasure in life. When they are in flow, we are more healthy, we are more available to life. The magic of life can flow through us, but I think there's so many things that kind of are in the way of that, and perhaps that's part of what it calls Inanna to the underworld. It's like on the surface she has everything, but there's some moan inside, there's something deeper calling her that she hasn't accessed. And so again, it's quite paradoxical, isn't it? Because I think a lot of times the pursuit of pleasure, people come to me, say, wanting more sexual pleasure, and I often say to them, it's not going to be an all pleasurable journey getting there.
I love the honesty in that.
It's the things that are blocking us being in presence to pleasure, because pleasure never, I don't think pleasure ever dies. I think it's something that is a birthright that's like inherent to our nature. But what's stopping you?
Yeah, that really aligns with my own worldview about suppression and how when we manifest kind of physical health challenges or things like that, it always comes back to what are we suppressing that's having the energy move in that way. And I think the snake kind of really is a good analogy for that, like that trapped life force. It's got to go somewhere, so it goes into some area of our body. And so I really love what you're speaking to there about really coming home to the body and being in pleasure and starting to unpack that as part of the healing journey and the journey of reclaiming our feminine as well. So I love what you shared there. I don't know if there's anything there that you want to speak to, or I can find another question if not.
No, I wonder if you can speak more to that snake medicine, because I'm just so curious about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Snake is very she's kind of like almost like the lover energy as an archetype. So that's why I was like, oh yeah, snake. I can see it with like the descent, but also that kind of very lover reclamation of our life force through pleasure. So that's ultimately who she is. So yeah, it very much feels all snake themed that we're talking to, and I love how that happens, because we couldn't have. I could have predicted from the themes, but I guess it's just how like the whole picture expresses, the whole body of work expresses is like all snake themed. So I love that. Let me just feed it into whether there is anything else. I think there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about, actually, which is around the power of sisterhood and the power of witnessing that you spoke to earlier. Like, what's your sense of like the power of people's stories being witnessed? And I think you spoke to like that in that naked power piece around like people being witnessed. Like at the end, that sounded like a really powerful kind of ritual, that photographing piece. Like, what's your sense of like how vital it is to be witnessed?
I feel like it's essential. I mean, how we are or aren't witnessed by our parents and caregivers as young babies and children informs so much of how we relate to life and how we experience ourselves. And I think a big part of what the Inanna Myth embodies is the sister wound, because, Inanna and Ereshkigal have been separated. And I'm very curious about in patriarchy as we have known it, in this dominator culture, what Rian Eisler would call a dominator culture, where women, having been encouraged to be adversarial towards each other more than sisterly, how is that playing out inside of us? And I think it's really a massive part of the witch wound as well, because in a sense the secret witch is the exiled sister inside of us. And that wounded sisterhood, I think it exists on the outside between women and mothers and daughters and grandmothers and all the rest of it, but I think it also exists inside of us. internally as well. And in sexuality work, obviously one of the really well-known archetypes is the Madonna horse split. You know, this sort of the good girl, the wife, the chaste woman, and then the exiled, the sort of more potent Lilith type energy, the woman who is in her sexual authority or in her sexual pleasure, that often gets called in modern day culture a whore or whatever. And we internalize that.
Mm.
And
Mm.
certainly internalize that in ways that I didn't even know about until I bumped into them in real time, in real relationships, and realized how disassociated I was from some parts of my own sexual energy, and my whole pelvis was really stiff and tight. I mean, it had manifested in a really physical way for me. Even though I'd done years and years and years of dance training, nothing could. So I'm so curious about how we embody these things in ways that we sort of take for granted that it's normal.
Yeah.
Normal. It's almost
Yeah.
high plain sight. And so sometimes having a witness can be the thing that shines the light on what's been hiding in plain sight. I've had some really beautiful moments. I had a very complicated relationship with my yoga teacher, but I remember one day he did really witness me in that stuckness and was very demonstrative in helping me shift it. And I remember him saying to me, and I can imagine lots of people be like, oh my God, how dare he? But I remember him literally saying to me, you don't own this. And he put his hand on his crotch as if to be like, you don't own your vulva, you don't own your sex. And he just said it to me like that. He could see it in me and he named it. And I was going, what is he on about? And then he inspired me to really get curious about what he'd said. And I didn't actually have the how dare he, because actually I could feel that he was speaking to a truth that needed to be named. And he was actually very good at doing that. And I got curious. I was like, oh, what is that? And so for me, part of my sister wound was actually my estrangement from my womb and my own vulva and vagina for me. I owned it. I shared it with others and I was really in contact with it then. But for myself, age 22, which I was then, no, it wasn't for me. I didn't self-pleasure a lot. I didn't own my sexual energy for myself. I didn't play with it. I didn't know it as intimately as I needed to. And so his comment inspired me to go deep. And I started to play with that life force energy. And, going back to the snake, which has woven through this whole conversation, Kundalini awakening, obviously the snake energy is coiled. Well, some say at the base of the spine. I actually think for women it's at our cervix, which is right beside, but I don't think cervix gets named enough in women's anatomy.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's been really key. But it initiated the beginning of what that awakening of that energy inside my body and my sexuality in a really conscious way. And that was one of the ways that I started to heal the sisterhood inside of me.
I love how you described all of that. There was just like a real wisdom in there that kind of shines out. So thank you for sharing that. I love it. I love it for several reasons. Also because it illuminates how people are remedies for us is something that I always say. Like people are remedies with their words, with their sharing. So and with their witnessing. So I think this whole element of sisterhood is so vital for that reason, because largely as a culture, we're walking around unconsciously, not even spotting these things. So for people to be able to reflect those things to us is so healing and transformative. But also it illuminated about how people can reflect things that are like really triggering. And again, like there's a gift in that. I think one of the things for me about the descent is when we enter it, there is always gold or gifts to reclaim, and that's not why we go there, or it probably is for some of us, but it's probably better to not go there, kind of looking for the gold. It's like we want to just be with the darkness, but equally, like when it's the same when we're triggered, like if we can be with that and be honest and in intimacy with what somebody has triggered for us, like that's also a descent. That's also a place where we can reclaim gold. So I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Thank you so much for naming that, because I think it's so true. And this is why it's really important that we have space holders who aren't afraid to go to dark and difficult places with us. And my teacher, Rosen, has been an absolute saving grace in my life for that reason, that she is unafraid of any part that I have brought to her in the decade that we've worked together. And she also isn't afraid to tell me the truth. But what she will do, and what I seek to do with others, is that if I am going to bring those tender truths out to the surface and we're going to meet the triggered part together, that I stay with the person in it. Sometimes what I see with space holders, what I've experienced with some space holders, is they know how to do the embodied work with people. They don't know how to stay with the trigger and do the process work that needs to follow that. And what is people get opened up and then abandoned in the same place they've been abandoned before. Really, that's triggering in a way that's actually not helpful.
Yes. Yeah, I love that you've shared that.
You naming how being triggered isn't a bad thing, essentially. If we both, it's very, it's really good to grow enough maturity to be able to feel when those moments of truth are ripe to be named and when they're not. Fine line we walk. So yeah, we need witnesses that are courageous.
Yes. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on that. And I love that you also named that nuance of then being in the space, because in actual fact, that's kind of, that's so critical. It's been kind of, in recent years, the only way that I've entered into that sort of work is having space holders who do that. So in many ways, like I've just forgotten that that's so important and so vital, because it's just so baked into the work that I do, the work that my guides do, that you almost forget that it can be another way. But it's so true. It's in fact, it's kind of that I often talk about like the quick fix that we seek in this kind of healing world. So many people will offer the quick fix, and of course what we're speaking to is not the quick fix. It's like the slow, deep, meaningful work, but it's hard. It's going to require us to look in uncomfortable places. It's going to take time. But when we're so used to living in a world that's the kind of quick fix, what will often happen, I find, I don't know how you feel about this, is that the quick fix always offers the initiation and then walks away.
Yes, exactly. Exactly that. And it's really irresponsible.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm shocked how much work there is out there seemingly like that, because I think that these days there's this sense of, okay, I've done a bit of training, now I can hold this. And perhaps people aren't calling in the supervisors, perhaps people don't understand the depth of the energies they're provoking.
Yeah.
It can be really shaky ground, and for those that are in that container and then get left with all that to contend with, it's really difficult to integrate without a witness. If anybody is listening to this and feeling that place, I would just really encourage you to, because I think what's difficult is it evokes our trust wound when we get left.
Yeah.
And maybe there's even a lesson inside of that to be looked at. But what I would just encourage people to do is not lose trust that there isn't a guide out there that can meet you in those very difficult places, because there is. And we have to bump into some difficult experiences along the way, but there are many amazing guides out there who are really mature in what they're doing and offering really deep work. So yeah, it's really important that we don't just kind of scuttle off into a corner and try and
Yeah.
come back out again, because that's just a huge loss.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I love that that you named that. It feels really important about that integration piece. Yeah, there was something in that around kind of the one of the universal laws I teach about is potency, and often the way that I see that we have potency as healers is that we will have two things. One is love, and the second is truth. And like we can alter the potency of what we're there. And I kind of read people to see like what people need in terms of like how much truth, how much love, as to like when I'm serving medicine like that. So so yeah, I think that's also really helpful that you named around like the gentleness of the truth that we speak as well in some cases.
Yeah. Yeah, because otherwise it is just re-triggering, right? If people
Yeah.
aren't ready, if they're not ripe, it can
Yeah.
just be reactivating, and that's not actually, yeah, not always helpful. So yeah, just being able to hold back when it's not the right time. And sometimes we get it wrong, right? We're not perfect.
Yeah. Oh yes, definitely.
Work as well. But yeah, I like that, holding love and truth beside one another and seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you've also named that guides don't have to be perfect. That's always something I've journeyed with. Oh, so yeah, I misdosed that one. Yeah, bless me. So the other question that I had, because we're kind of coming up to time, is like for a woman who's listening, who's sensing that she may be in a descent, do you have anything that you can kind of leave her in terms of like next steps, whether there's anything practical in terms of embodiment or yeah, or anything like that? What would you say if somebody's kind of resonating with that?
So I feel that descending takes a tremendous amount of energy.
Mm.
It's really tiring process. And in a culture that just encourages to work through and on everything,
Yeah.
it can be very difficult, particularly as many women are holding multiple things at once, many roles at once, to actually look after ourselves well. I think we need to take as much rest as we can when we can. So I get wanting to give sometimes rest can even become one of those like spiritual kind of holy grail places, like, oh, I must rest, and otherwise I'm not doing it right. And it's like, well, life is happening and I get that, but also we can carve out moments here and there to take extra rest when we're descending. Like, what is the part of us that is compelled to keep going over the top of what is deeply exhausted and needing us to hear it? So when I created the book, I created yoga nidra. It has been one of my life-saving practices. And when I created the book as part of the pre-order, I created an Inanna yoga nidra, and so many women requested it that I just now made it available when people sign up to my mailing list, because I think the world just needs more yoga nidra. So I'm like, here, have that. So if you struggle to rest, I think yoga nidra can be a really holding structure for like holding you to rest for 20 minutes. And it also is designed to really allow the body to wind down into those sort of slower brain waves and allow us to drop into our bodies in a beautiful, structured way. Sometimes I think a lot of what we need, because so much is dissolving in descent, we need structures to hold us.
Yes.
So yoga nidra is one I would suggest, but really, what will hold you? I guess the question is, what would hold you right now? So is that a women's circle? Is that a book? Is that poetry? Is that music? Is that disclosing to a friend or a loved one? Is it seeking out a therapist or someone similar? Asking yourself the question, what would hold me right now? What do I need to do? How can I create space in my life so I feel held? They're both taking responsibility for our own holding and our own ability to offer ourselves what we need, and reaching out to others in ways that perhaps we can't yet hold ourselves, or ways that we need help with. So I think it's both and. I think it's that we have to look for our own wisdom, and it's not a journey really to do it all alone.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that so much. There's we've just kind of sneaked in Rosa as a remedy at the end. The energy of the rose. So I love that. It's like we need the rose and the snake at the same time. Yeah, to have that softness as I guess Rosa is almost like the first step, because she's kind of that opening to that journey. And snake is quite an intense, as you've beautifully shown us, quite an intense energy to work with. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. But I love that. I love that. So that kind of softness, that tenderness as we begin to work with snake, is a gorgeous little next step.
Yeah, and I love that you've named the rose, because Inanna obviously is so associated with the rose. Love that she's also associated, for anyone that doesn't know, with Venus. And also anyone that doesn't know that as Venus moves through her cycle, she actually creates a rose shape. It's when you track it through the constellation, through her movement in the sky. So it's so implicitly woven into Inanna's medicine, and is such a symbol also of sisterhood and feminine and love, that rose medicine. So yeah, how beautiful that you've drawn that out.
I love that. I actually didn't know that, and that's really interesting, because often I find the divine feminine archetypes are kind of made up of lots of different archetypal remedies. Yes, I love that. That's gorgeous.
Really amazing, isn't it? I love her connection to Venus.
Beautiful. Well, I feel gorgeous now. So thank you. Thank you so much for that medicine. I always take the remedy that we're talking about and serving in the episode. So I'm like, oh, okay, what material for liberation have we got from snake for this one? So thank you for bringing in the rose at the end as well. That's really gorgeous. I would love to invite you to share like where people can find out more about you and your work, and what's kind of upcoming as well.
Cool. So you can find more about me at my website, carlymountain.com. And you can sign up there to my mailing list if you want to. And there you will get access to a whole, I think it's 8 conversation series that was created with the launch of the book. That they're free conversations, and they basically are conversations about the descent, about different aspects of it. So about grief and creativity, and different aspects of descending and rising. And also the Inanna Yoga Nidra is there. You can obviously buy the book, which I would love, because I just love when the book flies to places it needs to go. And we do have another round of Naked Power coming up starting in March 2026. We're starting on Friday the 13th in March. So beautiful day to begin. And there are, I think, 3 or 4 spaces left. So a gorgeous group of women are coming together, and I'm so excited about it. So if you want to come and do some work with me, then that's a great chance to do it.
Amazing. Wow. Well, thank you so much. I'll put all that in the show notes as well. But just really, I loved recording this with you. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
I absolutely love Carly and her descent magic. Here are my takeaways. Descent is sacred, a journey of initiation that strips away what is false and reveals the truth of who we are beneath the surface. The Inanna Myth reminds us that the underworld isn't punishment. It is a descent into the body, into our shadow, and the truth that waits in the darkness. The body is the oracle. When we listen to its trembling, pleasure, and pulse, we find the wisdom that's been buried beneath shame. Naked power lives in surrender. When we stop performing and meet life with presence, love and eros begin to move freely again. The snake teaches us to shed what no longer fits. Each skin we release becomes an act of remembering. Descent and rising are inseparable. The more we're willing to descend into truth, the more powerfully we rise in love.